What if I told you the most dangerous moment in the SR-71's life D&T happened during a missile launch, but after it survived one, at Mach 3, the aircraft was already melting, its skin expanding under extreme heat, fuel burning at an unbelievable rate, and the pilots fully aware that if anything went wrong there was nowhere on Earth they could land. Then the warning lights appeared. Temperatures pushed beyond safe limits, systems began failing one by one, and suddenly this was no longer a spy mission but a fight to stay alive. When NASA engineers later reviewed the data, they said these readings should have meant structural failure, that the aircraft should have broken apart and the crew should not have survived. But the SR-71 did something no aircraft had ever done before. It kept flying, past the point of logic, past the point of design, and straight into legend. The mission, which would later astonish even the NASA engineers to the extent that they could hardly believe it, began like any other, quietly and without fanfare. No headlines, no press release, just room for perfection, because the SR-71 took off as it always did, loaded but controlled, rising steadily until it met with its tanker to refuel. After refueling, it began to rise towards the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, speeding as the Earth grew smaller and curved beneath it. In the cockpit, the team went through procedures they had done so many times, knowing beyond a certainty that once they passed a specific point on the map, there would be no turning back. As the plane attained flight altitude and broke Mach 3, enemy radars began to detect them. Warning LEDs turned on in the cockpit. Tracking signals became stronger. Next were sure signs of missile launches. Surface-to-air missile stations were switching on, firing one after another. This was not abnormal. But what happened next was the rate of missile launches was greater than normal. The firing interval was shorter. The window of engagement was rapidly approaching. The SR-71 did not maneuver. The SR-71 did not dive. The SR-71 did not turn. Instead, the pilot did something which no other aircraft in the world could do. The pilot pushed the throttles full forward and let the Blackbird do what it was made to do. The speed rose. The Mach numbers rose above the operational limits. The temperatures rose. The data readings indicated temperatures which the engineers of the plane considered the maximum theoretical values, impossible in actual flight. The missiles soared into the air, tracking the signals from radar and infrared sensors. But they couldn't get closer. The SR-71 was not only speedy, it was speedier than the predictive equations had anticipated. The radar units had trouble computing an intercept course in a reasonable time frame. The guidance systems were behind the pace. Gradually, each missile exhausted its propellant supply, lost slack, or simply was left behind. But inside the aircraft, danger was never absent. The enemy was now heat. The aircraft's skin was aglow because of thermal stress. The fuel temperatures were rising to critical levels as it soaked up heat from the aircraft structure. The expansion forces were stretching joints and panels to their utmost. Any compromise in aircraft structure would have come to light at this point. The crew was taking readings in complete silence, because they knew that should any system fail them at this point, and this speed and height, there would be no correction. Yet the plane remained intact. When the SR-71 finally left enemy skies and reduced speed, this did not mean that the peril had passed. Rapid cooling can be as harmful as high temperatures. Descent had to occur in a controlled, expert, measured, and slow manner. It was not until the SR-71 had landed that the ground team began to realize what had been occurring on board, since only then could they observe the signs on the aircraft's panels, which reflected prolonged intense heat, and the discolorations on the coatings, which reflected prolonged high temperatures. When the data from this mission was later analyzed, shock gripped the scientific community. At NASA, mission data was poured over. There was thermal data that indicated an operation beyond known limits of safety. Data on structural stress indicated that the aircraft would have been subjected to damage, perhaps catastrophic, and that it would not have been able to survive. There were even engineers who declared that the aircraft had flown conditions that it shouldn't have been able to survive, and that it had come back okay. The SR-71 had survived its mission. This mission marked the beginning of many that would solidify the reputation of the Blackbird as an airplane that defied theory. During the service career of the SR-71 planes, more than 4,000 missiles were launched in attempts to engage an SR-71 aircraft. Not one was successful. It was not just due to stealth, and not just due to altitude. It was due to the perfect blend of all three: speed and disciplined flight operations. The SR-71 flew so fast that it compressed the decision time of enemy missiles 2 seconds. By the time the missiles were launched, it was already leaving the engagement zone. NASA's engagement accelerated over the years. The Blackbird became an aircraft lab, where the realities of hypersonic flight could be observed, something which could never be achieved within the wind tunnels and models of old. NASA contracted the SR-71 aircraft to test the heat-resistant materials developed for the space shuttle, to study the atmosphere under conditions of hypersonic flight, and to investigate the flight regimes which verged upon the realm of space. The SR-71 was understood to be the bridge between the two, the place where the realm of sky and space converged. Though the SR-71 was successful, the expense of flying it was extremely high. Maintenance needs remained constant. Every flight took several hours to inspect and maintain. Every mission aged the plane considerably. Cost considerations mounted. Advances in satellite technology provided other, less expensive, and more political ways of performing reconnaissance missions. Gradually, the focus moved from capability to cost. The SR-71 was not retired because it was no longer relevant. It was retired because it simply was too good, and too demanding, and too expensive in an environment where UAVs and orbital spycraft were on the rise. When news of its retirement became known, there was a sense that something precious was being sacrificed, even after its retirement. No other aircraft has come close to the SR-71's strength across multiple factors such as speed, high altitude, survivability, and versatility. Modern aircraft may have more stealth capabilities. Satellites may have better range. However, not a single one of them has the capability to react, adapt to mission requirements, or outrun all conceivable threats as the Blackbird. The SR-71 never had a crew member killed by enemy fire. It never failed a mission. It never lost a racing competition. It flew faster than any bullet, higher than any missiles, and closer to space than any airplane had ever attempted before. To this day, it gives service engineers pause in terms of how such an aircraft was produced in an age long before computers and sophisticated materials. The solution is not just an engineering phenomenon, it's also an attitude. The SR-71 is a product of people ready to take the attitude that the impossible is only unexplored territory. It was pilots who believed in their training and equipment, and in themselves and in each other. The SR-71 is a product of a nation that believed that it was worth risking everything to see the truth. The SR-71 Blackbird was more than an airplane. The SR-71 Blackbird was a statement, a warning, a work of genius. And the mission that tested it, beyond endurance, is one of the most incredible feats in the history of aviation. And if you've managed to stick around this long, you've seen what can happen when courage, science, and imagination outpace fear. Subscribe for access to untold stories of machines that were never meant to be just that. And because some legends refuse to fade as the years pass, but instead only get stronger.